the best. Have a fabulous time, Laurie. Okay.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you so much. All right, I'll mute everyone and you'll be able to unmute yourself anytime. So my goal is to speak for about an hour and then open it up for Q&A. And the reason I wanted to check on a time limit is because I would like to just deliver massive value in this time. So if there's anything that I don't cover, we can talk about it in the Q&A at the end. But I want to keep to, I've got this pretty well organized so that I can deliver everything I want to deliver in about an hour. And like I said, my goal is to just give you tools that you can use at the end of this talk that you can use to start changing your life right now. And I'll just kind of set up at the beginning, these tools will work for any area of life. I'm going to focus on weight loss because that's the topic of this call, and that's my specialty. But I want you to know that anything that I teach you today, you can use for any limiting behavior or belief or thing that's keeping you back. So as we go through this, I have a tendency to get distracted by the little chat at the bottom. Sometimes I'll squirrel and I'll look at that bottom chat and lose my train of thought. So if you ask questions, I'm not going to look at it right now, but I will look at the end. And if you even can write down questions and ask at the end, I'll make sure that I get around to those. And I just want to start by telling you that I am so excited about this. And like I said, I'm so delighted to see faces on this call. There are several people that are very dear to me that I've been on many of my calls before, and that I'm just so grateful. And I know that I saw Vanessa and Danielle are non-video participants. I can't see who's watching without video on, but I want to acknowledge you. And I want to acknowledge you if you're watching the recording later. And what I'd like to do is just begin with a little bit of an icebreaker. I expect this to be somewhat experiential. I'm not just going to sit here and talk. I'm going to have you experience along with me. And so I invite you just to place your hands on your heart right now. And just notice right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, just how peaceful you feel. 1 being not at all, and 10 being the most serene, peaceful you've ever felt in your life. And now I'd like you to take a deep breath in through your belly to a count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale for 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11. And now just go ahead and do that again. I'm going to be silent so I can do it with you. Just a nice inhale through your belly as if you were expanding a balloon. And just think about the people that are all around the world doing this with you right now. If you're watching this replay, just do this with us and imagine that you're here in person with us. Allow yourself to feel the love from all the people on this call. And just express gratefulness for something in your life, even if it's just gratefulness for the fact that you can take a nice deep breath in. And now I'd like you to notice how that number has changed from the beginning, just how peaceful you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. And if that number is an awesome number, I'd like you just to hold an anchor. Just make an okay sign with your ring finger and your thumb to anchor in that amazing feeling. And you can go ahead and let that go. And I might be asking you to use that anchor a few times during this call, because the cool thing is, you know, anything can be an anchor, but when you hold an anchor with intention, anytime you notice yourself feeling absolutely amazing, it lets you be able to bring that amazing feeling into any situation throughout the day. So anytime you notice yourself feeling amazing on this call, just hold that anchor and let yourself build that amazingness into that. All right. So like I said, my intention is to give you massive value. I specialize in weight loss. I'll tell my story in a minute, but I have a weight loss program, but I want in this hour to deliver you everything you need to have success with your weight loss clients and to have success in your own weight loss journey. So even if you never sign up for my program, you still have the tools that you need to have an amazing experience. I'm going to be during this call addressing how to change on an identity level. When I help people with anything, but specifically with weight loss, I always want to help them step into what it's like to think like a naturally thin, fit eater. And I'm going to be using the word thin in this call, and I have become aware that thin doesn't necessarily mean the same thing around the world as it does in the US. So when I say thin, I'm talking about being in the size body that feels great to you, that lets you move and be vibrant and healthy and fit in those just right jeans and just feel good about yourself. So if thin is a kind of a weird word to you, just plug in a word that's right for you when I say thin. So my goal is to help you know how to, and for your clients to know how to just think like a naturally thin eater. And in that, I'm going to cover nutrition. A lot of people have asked me, well, how do you talk about nutrition with your clients? And how do you talk about willpower with your clients? So I'll be covering all of those things on that call. And I'll start with my story. So when I was a little girl, I was raised in a pretty unpleasant environment. I had angry parents who struggled to raise their kids in a way that cultivated peacefulness. And so I grew up with a lot of depression. And I can remember when I was just starting school, I was in a school where we got spankings for being bad. It was a Baptist school. And I was just always kind of on the edge of my seat and trying to figure out how to stay under the radar. And I didn't have a lot of friends. And so I found myself very early starting to fantasize about break time, because we would get to go up to the commissary and buy nutty bars. And so I would spend my time in school fantasizing about nutty bars instead of being present and paying attention to my lessons. It was my escape. And then later on, when I started riding the bus home from school, I would get home at the end of the day and nobody would be home, and I would feel lonely, and I would go make myself macaroni and cheese. And I would eat this macaroni and cheese because it was my friend. And I remember even at a very young age, I think I was maybe 7 or 8, thinking, why am I still hungry? I just ate this big bowl of mac and cheese, but I'm still hungry. What's wrong with me? So I'll address that a little bit more later. But I also at the same time, really struggled with depression, really started to feel like I was fat, even though I look back at pictures of myself and I was almost too skinny. I was just a twiggy little girl, but I thought that I was fat. And that belief made my body kind of line up, and it's almost like it acted as a wish for my subconscious mind. When I focused on being fat, my subconscious mind started generating behaviors and desires that lined up with that. And I ended up being very overweight by the age of 19. But I remember as a little girl, I loved to watch Wonder Woman on TV. And it was almost like my happy place. It was almost a different kind, I was using my imagination instead of to fantasize about nutty bars. I was using my imagination to fantasize about helping people. And I saw Wonder Woman doing all these amazing things and making things better and fixing things. And I made a promise to myself, I know that there's a better way to do this. I know that there's a way to be free. I know there's a way to be happy instead of depressed. I know there's a way to be able to eat right and maintain my weight. And when I figure it out, I'm going to tell as many people as I can. And so that's what I'm doing here today. I just want to share this message. So we're going to talk a little bit about hypnosis according to Lori Hammond. I think there are many hypnotists on this call. The faces I recognize on this call are all hypnotists. A few non-hypnotists, but know that if you're not a hypnotist, you're right where you need to be and you will understand this. So when we talk about hypnosis, our role as a hypnotist, the reason we did this is because we wanted to help people, isn't that right? So we want to help people go from the problem to the solution. And so it's all about finding out how to get people where they want to be. So Freddie recently put a post up about if you found a lion with a thorn in his paw and you saw that thorn in his paw and you could tell the lion was miserable and in pain, would you look at that thorn and say, what kind of wood is this made of? Where were you when you got this thorn in your paw? What were you thinking? How deeply embedded is this thorn? You would just get the tweezers and remove the thorn. So a lot of what I show my clients is it really doesn't matter why you're stuck. What matters is how you get unstuck. And that's going to be our focus for this call, is how to get unstuck no matter why you're there. If it's eating from loneliness or boredom or poor nutrition, whatever it is, we're going to get you to the place that you want to be. All right, so with hypnosis, we deal with the subconscious mind. So, and you might call subconscious unconscious. I think of those the same. I use subconscious because I think that resonates with more people. They know what you're talking about. But the subconscious mind is the part of us that is responsible for creating automaticity in our lives, for making things easy and automatic. So if you think about the very first time you drove a car, you got in the car, you found the keys, you looked for the ignition, plugged them in, turned it just right. You maybe had to try a couple times to turn them far enough to get the ignition going. And then you're thinking about, okay, are my hands at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock? You're looking at your mirrors to see if there's anyone behind you, and you're making sure you're not following the car in front of you too closely. And then you are making sure you're staying in your lane. And when you look up to make sure you're staying in your lane, you accidentally push the gas pedal a little bit harder and go too fast. So you're trying to monitor all these things at once. And when you pay attention to one thing, you lose the other thing. And it's really, really difficult for a while. But every time you do it, every time you get in that car, it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier, until perhaps you've had the experience where you're driving home from work one evening and you pull into the driveway, and as you're pulling into the driveway, you realize, how did I get here? You just ended up there because your mind was somewhere a million miles away, but your subconscious mind was driving that car. So I call this a when this then that program that says, when I put my keys in the ignition, then I go onto autopilot and I know how to drive this car. I know when to turn my blinker on to signal a turn. I know how to do these things automatically because your subconscious has made this really easy for you. So you don't have to try to pay attention to a million things at once. This process takes place in many, many areas of our lives. So if you have ever shaken someone's hand, a handshake is one of these when this, then that processes, where when a person reaches their hand out, you automatically know just to lift your hand, shake, and let go. You don't think, okay. Well, and when you were a child and you saw people shake hands, you kind of learned by watching them. But the first time an adult reached their hand out to shake yours, you probably really had to think about it and think, am I doing this right? And now it just happens on autopilot. It's a when this, then that. When I see a hand, I shake the hand. So this same kind of thing happens for brushing your teeth. It was really probably difficult to learn to brush your teeth, and you had toothpaste running down your mouth, and every time you repeated that behavior, it became automatic and easy. Well, did you know, and I'm not sure where this number, who validated this, but that a person thinks about 60,000 thoughts a day. And these are automatic, unconscious thoughts. We're doing this on autopilot. We're not aware of it because our subconscious mind that loves us and wants to make life easy for us has made these thoughts automatic. So if a person was perhaps feeling depressed the day before, let's say they got in their car and they're thinking about something hard from the day before, their subconscious mind might have put together a program that says, when I get in my car, I think about this hard thing. And now it just happens automatically. Every time you get in your car, you might notice thinking about something that's upsetting. For me, I used to do this every time I would, on my commute from home to work, I would think about my kids. They were teenagers at the time, and I would think, oh, my middle daughter is making bad choices, and she's doing this, and she's not talking to me. What if this bad thing happens? And what if this bad thing happens? And I started to stress myself out because my subconscious mind just made this automatic program. When I get in my car, then I worry about my daughter. All right, is this making sense so far? Does anyone have any questions on what I've covered up to now? Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the anatomy of a when this, then that. And for today's purposes, I'm going to call these when this, then that programs a trance. So a lot of times people will come to me with anxiety and they'll say, I'm not sure I can be hypnotized. I'm so anxious. I don't know if hypnosis will work for me. And I'll tell them, you are already really, really good at hypnosis, because anxiety is running this when this, then that program that says, when I think about this, I worry. And it's also a focused imagination on something that is not happening right now. So you might be really thinking about that interview with your boss later, and you're imagining botching it or giving the wrong answer or saying something silly and them not giving you the job. And you're imagining it so vividly that you your body doesn't know the difference. Your body doesn't know the difference between reality and your vivid imagination. So it actually responds by releasing stress chemicals in the body, cortisol and adrenaline, and those fight or flight signals that make you start breathing a little bit more rapidly, that make you start, your heart start pounding a little bit, and you notice that happening, and then you're like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. My body is doing these things. It means that something is wrong. It means that I really am going to ruin that interview, when really it's just your body responding to the movie you're making in your mind. So here's the anatomy of a when this then that trance. Every one of these trances is coded inside our body. So if you're experiencing anxiety, there's a really good chance that your shoulders are a little bit tense, that your jaw is a little bit tense, that your breathing is shallow. And so it's coded in the way you're holding your body. Every single emotion you feel, every single craving you feel is coded in your body in a certain way. So when a person is experiencing cravings, they're actually very similar to anxiety, because they are making a movie in their mind about something they don't have. They might be thinking about the cheesecake that they saw in the break room earlier, or they might smell some baked good, and they immediately start thinking about what it's going to feel like to eat it. They're almost tasting it. Your mouth might even be watering. And so a craving is the same kind of when this then that trance as anxiety. And I really do think these are all trances. So the first part of a trance is that it's coded in our body language and our breathing. So every when this then that has a certain signature in the body. The second one is the story that you're telling yourself. So this is these unconscious thoughts that we're not even aware that we're thinking. So for me, when I used to have these cravings, I would think, oh, it's been such a stressful day. I need to have this food. This is going to make me feel better. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but I'll start tomorrow. And since I'm starting tomorrow, I just might as well eat all the food and have this be my one last hurrah. And we have this thing that's running through our mind, and it's often unconscious, but underneath it, there's often an idea that we're broken, that there's something wrong with us. And this is kind of on that belief level. And I have a suspicion, and I don't know if this is right, but I really suspect that all beliefs is the story that goes along with our when this, then that trance. So when we're feeling extremely confident, and when we've been thinking about that job interview and imagining ourselves having success and getting that phone call and saying, you got the job and we're going to start you at this wage that's much higher than you were expecting, and you walk into that interview just feeling like an absolute rock star, you have a whole different kind of story that's going through your head than when you're thinking about all these negative things that might happen. So the final piece of the when this, then that trance is who you are being. I call these the 4 Bs: your body, your breath, your belief, which is just your story, and who you are being. So you can think of who you are being almost as if it's a name tag around your neck. So when I was struggling with my weight, I had the name tag that said, I am a food addict. I have binge eating disorder. I had read so many books. I had educated myself so thoroughly about the problem that I was an expert at the problem. I was an expert at what was wrong with me. And when you start to change who you are being, everything else shifts. So when a person is overeating, they are being, for me, I always think of like that overeating part of me as being hungry. I am hungry. And it's really easy to shift out of that. And I will show you how in a few minutes. So does anyone have any questions on those 4 Bs? I'll reiterate that in a little bit, and we'll kind of go through some fun exercises to underscore this. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that 4th B, who you are being. So I really believe that every emotional state is a when this, then that trance. When something really good happens, I feel amazing. When I see fireworks, I feel excitement. When my kids give me a hug, I feel loved. we have all these different ways of utilizing our emotion, and they truly are authentically us, but these emotions are essentially wired in neural pathways in the brain. And every single one of you has anywhere between 120 and 150 of these wired in neural pathways. I kind of think of this as kids in a classroom. So if you had a giant classroom full of kids, maybe happy kid is over here, excited kid is over here, depressed kid is here, anxious kid is here. We have all these different ways of showing up in the world, but we very often get used to using the same 3 or 4. So we tend to experience perhaps anxiety on an ongoing basis, or cravings on an ongoing basis, or perhaps excitement on an ongoing basis. Or if you know someone who's very confident, that's someone who's really good at utilizing confident kid. So the catch is that only one kid can stand in front of the classroom at a time. So if depressed kid is in the front of the classroom, happy kid is seated. If in control around food kid is at the front of the classroom, hungry kid is having a seat and just sitting peacefully. So the way to call a new kid to the classroom is by using these 4 Bs. And I had mentioned on my info about this call that I would be teaching you the magic question that creates amazing shifts for your client and yourself. And that magic question, have you ever noticed that when you're in a session with a client, they come in and they're talking about the problem, and you know you need to find out what the desired state is, where you're going to bring them. And you say, okay, well, what do you want to have instead? And they say, well, I won't have this and I won't have this. And they're still talking about the problem. And Freddie tells a story. He says you can't imagine a person not ringing the doorbell. In order for you to say there's not someone ringing the doorbell, you have to actually sort of make an image or an imagination of someone ringing the doorbell to know what you're essentially crossing off. So anytime you talk about what you don't want to have, you are actually creating a map for the subconscious mind that says, give me this. So if you're trying to resist cheesecake, if you're trying to resist the brownies, you're actually utilizing the tool that is your subconscious mind in the opposite way than it works. You're trying to use willpower to stop something. And I'm really an anti-willpower person. I don't believe willpower is an effective way to step into that identity of a naturally thin eater. Okay, I got myself a little sidetracked. I'm going to look at my notes up here. Okay, so only one kid can stand in front of the classroom at a time, and it's who you are being. And when you start to really accept this, I know this is simple, but I double dare you to try this out for the next couple weeks and notice what kinds of things shift for you. And one of the best ways to change the kid that's in the front of the classroom is to hold your anchor. So let's practice that right now. I'd like you all just to hold that anchor again and take in a nice deep belly breath. And imagine that a string is pulling you up from the top of your head. We're just going to change that first B, our body. Stretch out your arms, hold your chin high, and just think to yourself, I am amazing. That's right. Just let yourself feel that. If amazing was a color, what color would it be? Imagine that color enveloping you right now, filling every cell of your body, building that into this anchor so that anytime you hold this from now on, you can feel amazing. And then you can go ahead and come back to right now. So I have this later in my notes to talk about, but I want to address it right now. So when a person is resisting a craving, let's say they know that there's cheesecake in the break room and they're thinking about that cheesecake, they're focusing on what they don't want, and focusing on what you don't want keeps you stuck there. And so you can't say, okay, stop thinking about cheesecake. Stop thinking about cheesecake. That's just like saying there's not somebody ringing the front doorbell. But when you change your focus and you change those 4 Bs, you change your body and your breath and your story, your belief, and you say, I don't need cheesecake. I feel great right now. I have everything I need. I am content. I am satisfied. This is that name tag. This is who you are being. That immediately brings content and satisfied kid to the front of the classroom. So instead of fighting that craving and instead of willpowering your way through that craving, you stop trying, because we all know that trying is an indicator of not being able to succeed. So stop trying to stay away from the cheesecake and just be content instead. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm trying to think how deep to go down this rabbit trail. So I really think that there's something that trumps who you are being. If any of you is familiar with Dilt's logical levels, he talks about when you change on an identity level, it makes everything beneath it easier. It makes it easier to change your beliefs, who you are, your capabilities, your behaviors, and it gives you control over your environment so that no matter what's happening around you, no matter what they're making in the bakery and the smells that you smell as you're walking by, you know, I am content, so those things don't affect you. But up above identity is purpose. And I really believe that when we're walking and we have a strong sense of purpose, that it makes everything else easier. And Freddie had actually mentioned that when one of the best ways to stop cravings and to get on track is to have a really big why. And I believe this is our sense of purpose. And one of the exercises I'll walk my clients through is to bring them into, I'll just walk you through it right now because I said I want to give you massive, massive value. So what I'd like you to do is just think about a goal. And if this could be a weight management goal, I want you to think about what it is you would like to accomplish. And I'm going to give you the magic question right now. When those overweight behaviors, whenever that obstacle that has been keeping you stuck is a thing of the past, what will be there in its place? Another way to say this is, what do you want? How do you want to feel? And I'd like you to just close your eyes. Take one of those nice deep belly breaths with a long, slow exhale. Just sinking into this moment, feeling the surface supporting you. Hearing the sounds in your environment, and those sounds allowing you to relax even more into this moment. And I'd like to imagine that before you is a magic wand. This one is just for you. Pick it up and imagine you can feel it in your hands. And imagine that you could transform and create a scene in front of you with your ideal self standing there, inhabiting the body that is just right for you, that lets you move and be playful, that lets you just experience joy and experience everything that is available to you in this life. Seeing a person that is completely in control and completely content around food. Imagine how you could just step into that body and feel it. Feel what it's like to feel light, strong, healthy. Look down and notice what you're wearing. Notice how comfortably your favorite clothes fit you. Imagine looking out at the people you love and seeing how excited they are for you, congratulating you. Notice how you have inspired them by achieving this. And when you have this, how do you feel? What kinds of stories do you tell yourself about your abilities when you have this? This right now, I am giving you a big clue here, because when you tell yourself this story, it changes everything. And when you tell yourself this story, who are you being? How would you finish the sentence, I am? Just repeat that to yourself right now. And if you're feeling absolutely amazing, hold that anchor. Knowing that this anchor is your roadmap to this feeling. And every time you let yourself feel this, it takes your focus off of that cheesecake or whatever it is and helps you know, I am this. That's right. And you can go ahead and release that anchor and come back to right now. So anytime a person eats for reasons other than physical hunger or eats beyond the point of physical satisfaction, it's because they're trying to feel something. They're trying to change the way they feel. They're trying to go from stressed to calm, from bored to excited, or perhaps they're using it to using food to celebrate with their family, or they think of food as something that they do when they're feeling really great. When I go out with my family, I eat. So we're using food for all these things other than just pure nourishment. And when you start to realize that your criteria for choosing to eat might be a little bit off, you can start to use that anchor for the things that you used to use food for. Does that make sense? All right. I had a few questions on Freddie's board about nutrition. How do we educate our clients to eat healthy? And one, Kimberly had mentioned that she struggles because some eating strategies work really well for some people, but not for other people. And some, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming how much information there is about nutrition. So I'm going to share a little piece of my story that will give you a background on how I came to this really outside the box conclusion that I'm about to give you. And that is so my kids are now 22, 24, and 26. And when they were babies, just after I gave birth to my second daughter, I think I was like 21 years old. And I was tired of struggling with my weight. And so I went and signed up for a weight loss class where they taught me it doesn't matter what you eat. You can eat anything you want. Just tune in to true hunger and fullness. And this was this weird idea for me, and it almost gave me like that instant flashback to being a kid and eating the mac and cheese and thinking, why am I still hungry? Why am I still hungry? So I learned that I had been interpreting all these different signals as hunger that had nothing to do with hunger. My criteria for hunger was, I feel lonely, I feel sad, I feel uncomfortable, I need to eat. And if you've ever seen a naturally thin person these are the people that you just get so frustrated with because they can eat whatever they want. Their just right jeans always fit them with no muffin top. They'd never stand on the scale. They never worry about their weight. They never even talk about their weight, and they just naturally are. Part of this is that's because what they expect. Just like when I was a little girl, I expected that I was overweight and I became overweight. These naturally thin people, it never even occurred to them they would be overweight. And so their criteria for eating is true physical hunger. And it might be helpful to just know, well, let me keep on my story. I'll get back to this. So I experimented with this. I ate whatever I wanted to, and I was really careful about only eating when I felt physical hunger in my actual physical stomach. And I probably went a little bit too hard in the paint where I was really restrictive. And I thought, okay, I want to make sure I don't eat too much. So I just had a little bit. And then I would get hungry a little, I was eating more frequently and smaller meals. But you guys, I'm ashamed to admit this now, but I was eating things like Snicker bars and cheeseburgers and croissants and just the least healthy food you can imagine. And I got to my goal weight. I'm not, this was, like I said, 20 years ago. So I stayed on that weight loss roller coaster for a couple more decades before I figured out how to get off. But I really don't believe that people are overweight because of what they're eating. I believe that people are overweight because of how much they are eating and because of the criteria that they are using to decide it's time to eat. The strategies around eating. So an overweight person's strategy is often, it's time to eat. They're eating because of the time on the clock, or because they smell food and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I think I'm hungry, when really they're just using their imagination to make themselves hungry, or because they're stressed, because they're bored, because they have something to do at work and they really don't want to do it, so they're doing it to procrastinate. Or perhaps they're feeling anxious or guilty, or it's time to celebrate, or they're with friends and family. So we have all these different criteria for eating that don't have anything to do with the purpose of food, which is to nourish our body and to give us fuel throughout the day. So like I said, my goal has always been to guide people to just think like a naturally thin person. And it's so awesome because a couple months ago, I stumbled on a book by Connie Ray Andreas. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with her, but she's an amazing woman who is just a master NLP practitioner. And NLP is all about modeling. It's about looking at what works and basically pretending to do that. So that's what the 4Bs are. The 4Bs are just modeling the answer to that magic question. When this thing is a thing of the past, what will be in there in its place? And then just pretending it's there already by changing your body, your breathing, your beliefs, and who you are being. So she wrote this book. The book is called The Heart of the Mind. And one of the chapters is called The Slender Eating Strategy. So what I'm saying is thin, she calls slender. And it's, if you've ever seen Connie Ray Andreas, she is just a naturally thin, beautiful woman who has never struggled with weight in her life. And so she dissected her strategy and she said, okay, how do I do this? And I'm not going to give it to you word for word, but essentially what she does is when she sees a food and she thinks, do I want that food? She checks in with her physical stomach, almost as if she could drop into her stomach. And your stomach is up high. It's just below the rib cage. And a lot of times people, you know, if you feel butterflies down low, that's your gut. That's where your food is digested. That's not where hunger takes place. So she checks in with that physical stomach that's kind of up high and thinks, do I want food? Does my stomach feel better now? And then she imagines what it would be like to eat that, or will it feel better once I've eaten that? And if she decides that it's going to feel better when she's eaten that, she eats it. And she, you know, she'll even kind of check in between bites and think, okay, am I satisfied now, or do I want more? And she decides if she's satisfied based on her physical stomach, not this idea that, oh, it tastes so good, I just need more, more, more. It's just what her stomach is doing. And she'll say, if she goes to a restaurant and she looks at a menu, she'll look at that menu and she'll decide what she's going to eat based on how she imagines each food will feel in her stomach. And so I thought that was really cool because I've been giving people strategies, but because I lost touch with my naturally thin eater in childhood, I wasn't sure exactly how that should look. And so it was so cool for me to find that book. And I think if you Google Connie Ray Andreas Slender Eating Strategy, you'll find a blog post that outlines that chapter of the book. But it's an amazing book that talks about lots of other things as well. So when you change your strategy for eating, it gives you so much freedom. And when I've presented this to my clients in the past, they've often said, but I just can't stop. It just tastes so good. I see this plate full of food in front of me and I just want to eat all the food. And I really believe that the antidote for that is to savor your food more. So I don't want you to feel deprived. I don't want you to use willpower. I want you to taste your food. And I really believe that when we get into the place of actually noticing what's going on in our mouth and as the food moves down into our stomach, when we start to actually notice that, we automatically start to make more healthy choices. Because for me, when I lost all that weight way back when eating junky food, I was more doing it out of a sense of entitlement, like, oh, I can have this. I'm just going to eat all this junky food and still lose weight. But I believe if I would have been in a place of self-love and a place of really noticing how my body responded to that food, that I would have naturally chosen more healthy options. And another thing is there is no one size fits all. There is no food plan that's right for everyone. Some people might eat vegan, some people might eat keto, which is pretty much the opposite of vegan, and they might both thrive on that. And there's so many different things in the middle. So it's all about noticing the way your body responds to food. If you have a small meal and you feel yucky later, you know, okay, I probably won't have that again. And this is a really, let me see what time it is. I'm just talking and talking. Okay, we're doing well. So, sorry guys. Okay, so one thing that naturally thin eaters do not do is they do not beat themselves up when they've made a mistake. So Connie Ray Andreas even says perhaps that she'll have like a get together and there's all this great food laid out and she's talking to people and she might eat a little bit too much. And she didn't assign any kind of moral judgment. She didn't talk about why she did it. She just said, I ate a little bit too much and I noticed that I felt uncomfortable. She didn't make any kind of judgment call. She didn't say, I was bad, I fell off the wagon, I screwed up. She just said, I felt a little uncomfortable. So the next day I just ate a little bit less. I didn't eat until my stomach was physically hungry. And then I just had a little bit less. And I really think that when a person beats themselves up and feels guilty about what they've eaten, that is a focus on what we don't want. Every time you tell yourself, I messed up, there's something wrong with me, I fell off the wagon, I made a mistake, it actually keeps us stuck. It keeps us focusing on what's supposedly wrong with us, which makes us act like there's something wrong with us, even though we are perfectly wonderful miracles, every one of us. And it just keeps us stuck. So the other day I needed to run an errand, and the only place to park was in a parking garage. And I had a really hard time finding a spot to park my car. The only place I could find was in between a car right here and a pillar right here. And I drive an itty bitty Toyota Yaris. So I was able to maneuver my tiny car in there and go run my errand. And when I came back, I got in my car and I kind of forgot about this pole right here. And when I backed up, I hear this thud. And I'm like, oh shoot, what did I do? So I pulled forward a little bit. I rolled down my window and looked out. And sure enough, I had run my side mirror into that post. So I re-steered my car, I backed it out, and I cleared it. And I actually got out and checked, and I had not damaged my car at all. I was so happy. Apparently these tiny little plastic cars are very resilient. And it's really interesting because to me, this is a metaphor for what happens when we supposedly fall off the wagon. When a person notices that they eat a little bit of extra food, it's almost like that thud, you know, that, oh, I had more than I needed. I went beyond satisfaction. I went beyond comfortable fullness. Instead of saying, oh, I screwed up, I might as well eat the entire cheesecake. That's like backing that car into that pole over and over. Oh, I hit the pole. I guess I'm just going to keep ramming my car back into it over and over again. So when a person beats themselves up and uses guilt, it keeps them stuck. It keeps them repeating that behavior. But when you take away the moral judgment, when you take away the idea that there are good and bad foods, that we are good or bad based on how we eat, it then allows you to just start to tell yourself a new story, that third B, that belief. Tell yourself a new story. Oh, I ate a little more than I'm comfortable with. Next time I'm going to do better. And it makes it so you are not being a screw up. You don't have to say, I fell off the wagon. I am bad. I messed up. And it lets you easily step into a better behavior. All right. So when I used to really struggle with my weight, I wasn't the kind of person who was a mindless snacker or would just eat a little bit too much at meals or that sort of thing. I would obsess about food all day long, and I would feel so uncomfortable that I would binge eat. And part of this is because as a little girl, you know, with that whole mac and cheese incident, I was aware that I was eating too much. And so I made this moral judgment about myself that there's something wrong with me. And I had to live up to that. I just went over the top. So I would eat half a cheesecake in one sitting. And I'm talking so much about cheesecake because Freddie and I have been talking about this cheesecake challenge where Freddie's favorite is carrot cake and my favorite is cheesecake, although carrot cake is a close second. And so I wanted to kind of explain to you why I think it's okay for a weight loss coach to talk about cheesecake, because I really don't think that there are any forbidden foods. I think that you should eat according to what your body tells you. And when you tap into your body and you just love yourself and you're eating from a place of self-love and nourishment, once in a while you might use a different criteria to eat. You might eat for celebration when you're not truly hungry. You might enjoy a few bites of different foods when you're out with your family. And when you give yourself permission to do that, it lets you not eat so much. And so I actually have with me right now a cheesecake. And I'm going to demonstrate for you all a naturally thin strategy. And I'd like you to imagine yourself doing this yourself. So in the past, if I saw a cheesecake, my mouth would water. I would want all the cheesecake. I would make cheesecakes from scratch when my kids were little and I was a stay-home mom. And I would like hide pieces so that I could make sure I got more pieces. And what I have learned, I really do eat very healthy most of the time. My diet consists mostly just of fresh meats and vegetables. I don't eat a lot of refined carbs. I don't eat a lot of refined sugars. But I've stopped putting these rules on myself, and I've stopped acting like some foods are forbidden and some are not, because when something is forbidden, it just makes us want it more, does it not? So when you tell yourself, I can't have this, it makes you want it even more. I was just on a consultation call with someone the other day, and she said, I was always naturally thin until I started learning about nutrition. And once I started learning about what I was supposed to eat and what I wasn't supposed to eat, I started obsessing about it so much that I gained weight, and she struggled with her weight ever since. So a naturally thin strategy would be just to look at that food and express gratitude with no moral judgment. I am going to eat a bite of cheesecake. This looks delicious. I can smell it. And just sink your fork in and almost just look at it for a moment. Look at it on your fork. Think about the textures. I can see the crumbs on the bottom, the berries on the top, and the creamy cream cheese in the middle. And then place it in your mouth and savor it and feel it in your mouth. I have never eaten on camera before. This is going to be real interesting, you guys. So just imagine that you're tasting this along with me. And as you're tasting it, or if you don't love cheesecake, imagine this is a bite of your favorite food. Imagine the way it feels in your mouth and tell yourself, I am so easily satisfied. This is enough. And what I've learned from doing this is that I feel so, I'm not bluffing you guys, I feel so good after one bite that I can easily throw the rest in the trash. And a lot of people have a really hard time with that. They think, I don't want to waste food. It's wrong to waste food. But let me tell you something. If you're eating beyond your own physical cues for hunger and fullness, you are using your body as a trash can. That food is going to waste either way. So would you rather the food go to waste inside your body or inside the trash can? All right, we're almost to the end here. I think I've covered everything on my notes. So what I'd like you to do right now, we were starting to talk about purpose, how if you have a big enough why, everything else falls into place. And a few months ago, I was on a call. I do these weekly calls every week inside my weight loss program that are really similar to this, but they always have a hypnosis session at the end. And one of the people on the call made me aware of something so cool that I hadn't thought of before. And that is that there is so much purpose in the present moment. And anytime we're feeling a struggle, we're feeling a need to engage in willpower, it's because we are not in the present moment. And we just bring ourselves back into the present. That is the most massive sense of purpose there is. Because you can use your anchor to bring back that feeling you had when you were thinking of yourself as accomplishing your goal. But sometimes we lose sight of those big goals. It's hard for us to always keep moving toward that dream when it seems like, you know, maybe you have a lot of weight to lose and it feels like every day is a struggle and it's taking so long to get there. If you come back into the present moment and you just experience presence right now, that is the ultimate purpose. I really believe that that is the biggest why that there is this present moment. If I could show you a really simple way to experience the present moment right now, would you be interested? So what I'd like you to do is just look a little bit above you and just focus on a spot that's in front of you. Focus on one spot. Just focus intently and intensely, almost as if you could look right through it at a very pleasant scene. And if you're watching this on a replay, just join along with us because this is a really cool exercise. And as you focus on that spot, just become aware of 3 things you can see with your peripheral vision. Just noting them in your mind. And now I'd like you to become aware of 3 things you can feel. Perhaps you feel the surface beneath you supporting your body. Perhaps you feel your clothing on your shoulders. Perhaps you feel your hands. And as you continue to stare and focus intently on that spot, I'd like you to become aware of sounds in your environment. I'll be quiet and I want you to notice some sounds you might not have noticed before. And now I want you to notice the peace that is in your body in this moment. How you're not thinking about your to-do list. You're just noticing what is right now. And as you continue to stare at that spot, just go ahead and hold that anchor and say to yourself, I can be present. There is purpose in presence. And you can go ahead and come right back to now. Perhaps noticing that the colors seem a little bit brighter and a little bit more vivid. And we are at 5 minutes before the end of the hour, so I'm just gonna read over a couple questions I had written down from the group to make sure that I covered everything, and then I'll open up to questions from all of you. Okay, so Kimberly said, I'd be interested to hear if you have any superhero tools I can add to my toolbox that when the weight comes off and then goes straight back on or plateaus. Thanks, I'm looking forward to it. So Kimberly, that is an awesome question. And I do have a couple of really awesome strategies for you. The first one is when it feels like weight plateaus or when it's when you're feeling stagnant or like weight loss is slow, one of the very best things you can do is just drop into presence and change that story. Instead of, it's taking so long, I wish it would come off a little bit quicker, what's wrong with me? Start saying, I am enjoying this present moment. I'm making great choices and my body will follow. Every time I make a great choice, my body pays attention. And just start to talk really nice about your body and start to imagine what it's gonna be like to fit into those smaller jeans. Imagine breaking through that plateau, because your subconscious mind is responsible for your metabolism, for your digestive system, for your immune system, for all of those things. And when you get playful and use your imagination to just vividly imagine success as if you were there, I really believe something happens in our body and our metabolism lines up, that weight starts to come off, that plateau starts to break. Sometimes I think those plateaus might even be a little self-love test. And I think when you just let yourself start saying, it's okay, I love myself right here, I know this plateau will pass and it's gonna be okay, and you start loving yourself, it lets your body say, okay, she's serious, and keeps moving you there. And I really believe that the way you take the journey dictates the way you arrive at the destination. So when a person tries to motivate themselves and push themselves forward using willpower and guilt and negative self-talk and beating themselves up, when they get to their goal weight, they're going to look in the mirror and they're still going to see somebody who doesn't deserve to have good things. And they're still going to keep beating themselves up. They're going to find something else wrong with themselves. They're never going to see themselves as the thin, fit, healthy person that they are. So be gentle to yourself. And then my second strategy is, let's see, when the weight comes off and then goes back on again. I don't remember what my second strategy was going to be. So if I think of it, I will tell you. All right, and then Henriette had written, the hardest part for me has been not letting the environment take over all the time, and take over all my time, and what to do when my energy is very low and I'm sick. So that is also a great question. I think it can especially be a struggle for people who think that they need to meal prep in advance. They need to follow a certain meal plan. They need to make sure they're eating this amount of protein, this amount of carbohydrates, this amount of fat every day. And it becomes a stressful thing where we're overhauling our lifestyle. It can feel like we don't have enough time. And so I just want to release you from that idea. There may be a time when you want to up your game in the nutrition category and start to eat even more healthy. But for now, I would like you to just start focusing on savoring your food more when you do eat. Just really, you're going to be eating during the day anyway. Just let yourself take one of those deep belly breaths, one of those 7-11 breaths, and just really be present as you eat. And what's going to happen is when you eat in a place of peace, it actually speeds up your metabolism and lets you digest food better. When you eat at a place of stress, almost like you're breathing, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling stressed out, your fight or flight system is running in a way that actually shuts down digestion. It actually creates fat storage. So when you just simply do one of those 7-11 breaths first, it lets you turn off the fight or flight system and turn on the rest and digest system. It lets you release peace chemicals in the body. And the reason, if you want a tiny bit of science behind that, when you breathe through your belly, it actually pushes your diaphragm down into the vagus nerve, which is the key player in the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of fight or flight. Remember how we talked about 2 kids can't stand in front of the classroom at the same time? Well, when you're releasing fight or flight chemicals in the body, peaceful kid is sitting down. And when you turn that off just with that one 7-Eleven belly breath, it actually brings peaceful kid to the front of the classroom and stressed out kid has a seat. So Henriette, even if you can just take a few moments to maybe add 2 extra minutes to your meal where you're really tasting your food, where you're letting yourself change those 4 B's to one of peace. You change your body and your breathing with that 7-Eleven breath. And then you start to just tell yourself, I am safe, all is well. It is okay for me to eat in peace. And that final B of who you are being, I am at peace. When you start to change those 4 B's, it changes everything. When your energy is very low and you're feeling sick, that is really hard. So I'm just going to share a strategy that I used the other day. I've been having these really interesting, what we think now are perhaps migraine headaches, where I wake up with this dizziness, and sometimes it's really intense and I'm nauseous and I have a hard time moving. And sometimes it's really subtle, but there's no pain, but it's very distracting and it kind of makes me feel ditzy. It makes me not be able to think clearly. Can you all hear? Will you nod if you can hear me? Okay, good. I'm seeing chats and I want to make sure nobody's trying to tell me anything. I don't want to look at them yet. But, and so the other day I woke up and I was feeling dizzy and my story was, oh, this is so frustrating. What is wrong with me? Why is my body doing this? And I thought, okay, I'm going to try something different. And I started thinking about every part of my body that felt okay. And I noticed that my toes felt really good. I noticed that my hands felt really good. I noticed that my legs felt really good. And it's almost like I dropped my awareness into those different parts of my body. And I started shifting my focus onto what was right. So when a person is feeling sick or feeling pain or feeling discomfort, if you start, it can be hard, I know, because that pain is real, that discomfort does feel real. But when you start to shift your focus and notice what is right now, it changes everything. So you can try that strategy and notice how well it works, because if a person is feeling sick and they're eating to feel better, we know that doesn't really work. It's not going to make us feel better. So you can try using your anchor, try changing those 4 B's, and just get that shift. It's so much easier and quicker. So if you're pressed for time, it's so much quicker to do this than it is to go make yourself a meal. So I hope that's helpful. I have one more question. And I also think that when we stop resisting that thing and we just let ourselves have a small amount and really taste it, our body will tell us when we've had enough.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I say to my clients is that eat what you want, find a way of living over these next few months, because I always set some, a goal. I believe goals have to be time bound and they have to be exciting. They're the 2 rules that I give people. It has to be an exciting goal, it has to be time bound. But I say find a way of living that will lead you to that goal that's fun and enjoyable to do. Because if it's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it won't last. That's my thinking on it.
I love that. I love that. Before we move forward, I don't want to forget, I see some people are saying thank you and goodbye. So I have made you all a gift, and I don't have it loaded just yet, but if you give me about 10 minutes after the end of this call, I have made you all a gift. I want to give you one of my favorite and one of the most effective audios that I have as part of my weight loss program that you can listen to as you sleep at night. At the end, I give suggestions for deep sleep, so you don't really want to listen to this in the middle of the day, but it's all about just letting yourself relax deeply and tap into that part of you that knows the things you don't know you know, and helps you start to savor your food more, listen to your body more. And if you feel like you can't listen to your body, please know that that's just the story that goes along with your trance. Those 4 B's, that's your belief. And I want to challenge you to start saying to yourself, I can tap into my body. And every time you notice one little bit of progress, tell yourself, I did it. I acknowledge that. I heard my body. Thank you, body, because what we acknowledge gets repeated. So if you go to my website at the end of this, it's trancypants.com. That's TRANCY pants, like fancy pants, /Freddie. And like I said, I don't have it quite yet loaded, but I'll load it as soon as this call is over.
For those who are about to leave, I just want to thank Laurie for doing this presentation. I believe it's been fantastic. I know it's fantastic. I know everyone that's watching this is going to feel the same way. So I want to thank you It was fantastic. It was spot on. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Very good.
Thank you so much, everyone. You were all fantastic. I'm so happy I got to see you all. And Freddie, I am so grateful for you. I know that this is so well attended because you have promoted it, and I just thank you. You have mentored me in beautiful ways. Your book has changed my life. Honest to goodness, you guys, if you do not have Freddie's book, you are doing yourself a great disservice. And I highly recommend the audiobook because Freddie reads it, and you can put your headphones on and sit back and be hypnotized by the great Freddie Jacquin himself. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Does anyone have anything that they would like me to cover before we hang up?
I have one question. Question.
Okay.
How can someone of 22 have children in their 20s? That's what I want to know.
It's magic. Hypnosis.
It must be, yeah.
Works. Yeah. No, I'm going to be a grandma in February, you guys. My oldest daughter is 26. She has the most amazing husband in the world, and she is actually finding out the sex of the baby tomorrow. I'm so excited, but
that's going to be fantastic for you.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Anami. I'm so glad you were here. Thank you every single one of you for joining, and everyone who's watching the replay. I'm here for you. You can email me at lori@trancypants.com, and I am here for you. Whatever you need, ask me. I love talking about this stuff.
And can people find your programs and your training on that website?
Yeah, so you'll have access to my weight loss program just at trancypants.com. It's closed right now, but you can get yourself on the wait list, and it will open up in a couple weeks or so. And the best way is probably just to email me. Facebook really is the best way. I do a lot of engagement on Facebook. I love seeing people and talking to people and engaging with people through direct messenger. So you can message me on Facebook. If we're not friends already, send me a friend request, and I'm here for you. Yeah.
Thanks again, Lori.
Thank you, Freddie.